Welcome into today's deep dive. And, before we even jump into this ancient story of staggering corruption and quiet defiance, I actually just want to start by offering a genuine divine blessing for your day and really for your entire week ahead. May you just find clarity and peace and some real purpose in whatever challenges you're facing right now.
That is a really beautiful way to start. And honestly, it fits perfectly because it's a profound story we're looking at today. We are going to be exploring the study notes and the historical context around a really pivotal ancient text, which is 1 Samuel chapter 2.
Yeah, and it reads like a movie. I mean, it's this dramatic, highly cinematic narrative of extreme contrasts.
Right, exactly. We're essentially exploring what happens when profound, life-altering gratitude collides directly with unchecked systemic corruption.
And what we're really tracking here for you guys listening is how an entire nation's leadership was completely turned upside down.
Yeah, it's a massive transitional moment in history.
It really is. And to understand it, we kind of need to focus on three main groups. First, you've got this fiercely faithful mother. Then, second, a deeply corrupt, entrenched set of religious leaders. And third, a young boy who quietly represents the dawn of a completely new era.
So we had to start with the mother, Hannah.
Yeah.
And, the context here is absolutely essential.
Right.
Because in the ancient Near East, a woman's entire social standing, her security, her future, all of it was tied up in her ability to have children.
Yeah, it was everything.
Exactly. And Hannah has just come through this long, agonizing period of infertility.
Mm-hmm.
But she finally has a son, miraculously, Samuel.
Mm-hmm.
And she brings this child to the religious center, to Shiloh, to dedicate him to God's service.
But, I mean, she doesn't just drop him off and say, thanks for the kid, right?
No, that early.
She delivers this massive, soaring theological poem. Traditionally, people call it Hannah's Song. And what strikes me immediately about this poem is how it sets the thematic framework for the entire era.
Oh, absolutely. It's foundational.
Because she focuses entirely on the reversal of human fortunes.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
she talks about the rich suddenly becoming poor and begging for bread while the hungry are, finally fed.
Yeah, and the barren woman having 7 children, 7 being that classic poetic number for absolute perfection in that culture.
Right. While the woman who had many children loses her vigor, it's just a total flip.
It is, and the imagery she uses is incredibly radical for the time. She talks about the poor being lifted straight out of the ash heap.
Which is pretty literal, right?
Yeah, literally.
Yes.
In an ancient city, the ash heap was the actual garbage dump just outside the city walls.
Wow.
It's where the absolute lowest cast-offs of society lived. And she says God lifts them from the garbage dump to sit on thrones of glory with princes.
There's actually a historical echo here that is really hard to ignore.
Oh, with Mary?
Yeah. If you read Hannah's Song and then fast forward centuries later to the New Testament, you find Mary's song, the Magnificat, in the Gospel of Luke. And they share like the exact same DNA.
They absolutely do. Because both are these bold declarations that God is actively in the business of transforming human destiny, right? Just flipping the social order completely on its head.
Totally.
And the way Hannah describes God in this song is fascinating, too. She calls God a rock. Now, to our ears today, a rock is just, a heavy stone.
Right, like a boulder in your yard.
Exactly.
Mm.
But the Hebrew concept she's using, it evokes this towering, unshakable cliff of refuge, like a massive fortress. She also talks about God exalting her horn.
Which, I gotta say, feels like a really strange metaphor today, but I imagine it meant something very specific to her audience back then.
Oh, very specific. The horn represents the raw, dynamic strength of an animal, like a wild ox.
Oh, okay.
It was the ultimate symbol of dignity and power in an agrarian society. And perhaps most importantly, she describes God as a God of knowledge who weighs all human actions on a scale.
Now, see, that imagery of the scale is what kind of trips me up a bit.
Why is that?
Well, Hannah establishes this towering standard of justice, sure, but her focus on material wealth feels completely at odds with how we think of modern spiritual songs. I mean, if she's praying to a divine being, why is she so fixated on who gets to eat, who gets to be rich, and who gets physical power?
It is a jarring shift, right?
Right.
Especially if you view religion purely as like this private spiritual comfort.
Exactly.
But in the ancient understanding of reality, God's sovereignty isn't just confined to some invisible spiritual realm.
Right.
He has total authority over the gritty, physical realities of life and death, of poverty and wealth. Hannah actually thinks that God controls the pillars of the earth.
So she's saying the material world is entirely under his jurisdiction.
Exactly that. She focuses on material realities to demonstrate that human power, whether that's massive political influence, immense wealth, sheer physical intimidation, it is ultimately an illusion.
It's fragile.
Extremely fragile.
Yeah.
The people who think they are entirely self-sufficient, just sitting up at the top of the social hierarchy, they're actually the most vulnerable. They don't realize they're standing on a foundation they don't control.
Man, that makes perfect sense. It's almost like a massive corporate restructuring.
Oh, that's a good way to put it.
Yeah, like imagine this arrogant, entrenched board of directors just suddenly ousted without warning, and the most overlooked entry-level workers are just placed directly into the C-suite.
And actually, to take that restructuring analogy a step further, the ousted board members aren't just fired and given, a golden parachute. They are left literally begging for their pensions. God is weighing everything, and nothing escapes notice.
Which really brings us to a massive collision in this story.
Right.
Because Hannah establishes this beautiful standard of divine justice, but then we have to look at what is actually happening on the ground at the religious center in Shiloh.
Yeah, the reality is bleak.
While Hannah is faithfully dedicating her miraculously born son to God's service, the leaders who are already running that service are just brazenly abusing their power.
Yeah, we are introduced here to the sons of the high priest Eli. Their names are Hophni and Phinehas, and the text describes them as sons of Belial.
Which sounds intense.
It is. It's an ancient way of saying they were worthless, morally bankrupt men.
Wow.
Yeah, they were the highest-ranking religious figures in the land. They functioned as mediators between the people and God. Yet the text explicitly states they had absolutely no regard for the Lord whatsoever.
We need to get into the mechanics of how they operated, honestly, because the details here are just wild to me.
They are completely brazen.
By law, the priests were supposed to receive a very specific rightful portion of the animal sacrifices as their compensation.
Right. Established rules.
But Hophni and Phinehas basically decided those rules were just for the little people. They instituted this custom where, while a worshiper's meat was boiling in a pot, they would send a servant over with a massive three-pronged fork.
And the servant would just plunge it into the cauldron and take whatever the fork brought up.
It was a total violation of established regulations. It was essentially extortion. But they actually took it even further than that.
Oh, right, the raw meat.
Yes. Before the fat was even burned on the altar, their servant would come and demand raw meat from the worshiper.
Okay, I have to be honest here. Reading this to a modern ear, using a big fork to steal a piece of brisket from a boiling pot, or, demanding raw meat instead of boiled meat, it sounds like bad manners at a barbecue.
Right.
Or like petty theft at worst. Why is this text treating this like a catastrophic civilization-ending crime?
It sounds strange until you realize what the sacrifice actually represented to the people.
Okay.
Imagine an average citizen in that ancient world. They are likely very poor. They have brought a prized animal, maybe something they've had to save up for all year, seeking forgiveness or wanting to express deep gratitude to God.
Right, it's a huge deal for them. Exactly. And right in the middle of this sacred, vulnerable moment, a thug with a giant fork comes over, intimidates them, and just steals the best part.
So it's literally like that charity CEO embezzling funds right in front of the desperate donors.
Exactly. But the theological crime is even worse. And it really centers around the fat.
How so?
In this ancient sacrificial system, the fat was considered the absolute best, richest part of the offering. It belonged exclusively to God. It was meant to be burned on the altar as a physical symbol of giving the absolute best to the Creator.
Oh, wow. So by demanding the raw meat with the fat still on it before it was offered to God, Hophni and Phinehas were actively, publicly demonstrating that their own personal appetites mattered more than the God they supposedly served.
They were robbing the divine. They were taking the best for themselves and just leaving God the scraps, all while completely terrorizing the average citizen.
That's horrifying.
And it wasn't just financial and spiritual corruption either. It was moral. They were actively committing sexual immorality with the women who served at the entrance to the place of worship.
So it's just a complete systemic collapse of integrity.
Total collapse.
Which, of course, brings us to the guy who is supposedly running the show, their father, Eli.
Yeah, Eli.
Eli is the high priest. He hears about all of this extortion, the theft, the abuse, and he offers this incredibly weak, almost pathetic rebuke.
It's so frustrating to read.
He essentially just says, I hear no good report from the people. If you sin against God, who will intercede for you?
It is a stunning failure of leadership on his part. I mean, he is the high priest and the judge of Israel. He had the authority and, frankly, the duty to remove them from office immediately?
Right, he could have just fired them.
Exactly. Instead, he just gives them this mild verbal warning.
It's like a parent saying, hey guys, people are talking on social media. This really isn't a good look for the family brand. It is completely disproportionate to the immense damage they're actually doing to the people and the whole institution.
And there's a chilling reality embedded in this text, too.
Yeah.
It says the sons didn't listen to Eli because God had already determined to judge their obstinate rejection.
So they were already past the point of no return.
They had crossed the line. Their hearts were completely hardened to any kind of correction.
Okay, so you have this loud, aggressive, deeply entrenched culture of corruption. But right in the middle of this completely toxic environment, the text forces us to look down at a child.
The contrast is brilliant.
We transition to the boy, Samuel. He is serving in the exact same environment, breathing the exact same air as these corrupt priests.
It's one of the most striking contrasts in the whole narrative. You have Hophni and Phinehas, the adult leaders, presumably walking around in these elaborate, jeweled, highly visible priestly vestments, just throwing their weight around.
Yeah.
And then you have Samuel, a young boy, ministering before the Lord wearing a simple linen ephod.
So, for those of us listening who aren't experts in ancient clothing, what exactly is an ephod, and why does it matter so much that a child is wearing a linen one?
An ephod was a ceremonial garment associated with the priesthood. Now, the high priest's ephod was incredibly intricate, woven with gold and precious stones.
Very flashy.
Exactly. A plain linen ephod, on the other hand, was the most basic, humble version, worn by ordinary priests in service. So by highlighting that Samuel's wearing it, the text is visually contrasting his pure, humble service against the bloated entitlement of Eli's sons.
And there's this one detail in the text that it stops you in your tracks. Every single year, when Hannah and her husband Elkanah came up for the annual sacrifice, she brought Samuel a little handmade robe.
Think about the emotional weight of that little robe.
I know.
She had fulfilled her vow by giving her son to God's service, but she never stopped being his mother.
Right.
Every single year, as he grew, she measured, spun the wool, and wove a new robe for him. It was a physical manifestation of her ongoing, unwavering devotion.
It's so relatable. It's like a parent carefully packing a care package for a kid away at college, year after year. It's this quiet, intimate act of immense love cutting right through the noise of a completely broken system.
It really is.
But I have to ask, how does an honest intern, basically like Samuel, survive in this environment? I mean, if you place a young, impressionable kid in a corporate culture where the senior executives are literally looting the building and getting away with it, that kid usually gets corrupted.
Usually, yes.
How does he not get dragged into all this?
The text makes a real point to show that Samuel is insulated by his faithful obedience.
Okay.
And interestingly, while Eli fails completely as a father, he does bless Hannah and Elkanah.
Right, the parents.
Yes. And as a result, Hannah goes on to have 3 more sons and 2 daughters.
Yeah.
She experiences that abundant completion she sang about earlier.
That 7 she was talking about.
Exactly. Meanwhile, Samuel's trajectory is entirely different from Hophni and Phinehas. The text uses a very specific phrase to describe his development. It says he grew in stature and in favor with both God and men.
Wait, that phrase definitely rings a bell. Doesn't that show up much later in history?
It absolutely does. That exact phrasing is echoed centuries later in the Gospel of Luke to describe Jesus as a boy growing up.
Oh, wow.
It's a literary marker. It signals to the reader that this child is being uniquely, divinely prepared for a significant, righteous role. He is completely distinct from the rot surrounding him.
But the rot still has to be dealt with, right? I mean, the tension between the holy environment and the unholy actions of these priests, it can't just continue indefinitely.
No, the system is entirely broken. It has to snap.
And that brings us to the final act, the audit, basically, and the total collapse of the house of Eli.
Yes. The systemic abuse reaches its limit, and a direct divine intervention occurs. An anonymous man of God arrives on the scene. Yes, a prophet functioning as a divine messenger. And in the ancient world, you have to remember, a messenger didn't paraphrase. They recited the sender's message exactly word for word.
Right, no sugarcoating.
None. This prophet confronts Eli and issues a devastating indictment. He starts by reminding Eli of the immense historical weight of his family's privilege, tracing it all the way back to the ancient covenant made with his ancestors in Egypt.
Basically saying you were chosen out of everyone to be the priests, to approach the altar, to represent the people.
Right, but then the hammer falls. The prophet says to Eli, "You honored your sons more than me by letting them fatten themselves on the best of all the offerings of my people.
I really want to pause and explore that concept of complicity here,
Yeah, it's crucial.
because I think it deeply challenges how we view leadership today. Eli wasn't the one down there with the three-pronged fork, right?
No, it wasn't.
He wasn't demanding raw meat. He wasn't preying on the women at the tent entrance. His sons committed those crimes. But the indictment falls directly on Eli.
Yes, it does.
His passive leadership, his refusal to actually stop them, is treated as a full endorsement of their actions. How does this reframe our modern understanding of accountability?
Well, we often define accountability in very narrow, active terms today. Like, did I embezzle the funds?
Die.
Did I harass the employee? If no, then hey, I am innocent.
Hands are clean.
Exactly. But the ethical universe of this text demands active integrity, not just passive disapproval. Eli knew exactly what was happening. He possessed the institutional authority to stop it.
Mm.
By choosing to merely give a verbal scolding rather than taking decisive corrective action, he was effectively prioritizing his family's comfort and position over the integrity of the institution and the honor of God.
So passive leadership in the face of active corruption is essentially complicity.
Exactly. When a board of directors turns a blind eye to a toxic executive because that executive brings in revenue, or in Eli's case, because they're family, that failure of institutional oversight makes the leaders just as guilty as the perpetrator.
And because of that complicity, the ultimate consequence arrives. The prophet declares this vital defining principle: those who honor me I will honor, but those who despise me will be disdained.
God just revokes the unconditional promise to Eli's specific lineage. He basically says, I promised your family would serve before me forever, but I will not be bound to a lineage that openly despises me.
Wow.
And the judgment that follows is absolute. God says he will cut off Eli's arm.
Meaning what exactly in that culture?
So in ancient Near Eastern idiom, the arm represents power, action, defense. To have your arm cut off means total vulnerability and the complete loss of strength and authority.
It's over.
It is. His descendants will die in the prime of life.
And to prove this isn't just an empty threat, a specific sign is given to him. Hophni and Phinehas, the two corrupt sons, will both die on the exact same day.
Yeah.
When that happens, Eli will know the rest of the prophecy is locked in. But there is a sliver of hope here, right? The judgment isn't the final word for the nation itself.
No, it's not. God promises to raise up a faithful priest who will act according to what is in God's heart and mind. Now, historically, this points to a priest named Zadok who served faithfully during the time of King David. But theologically, it points much further forward to a permanent, uncorrupted messianic priesthood.
So the system will be redeemed, just not by Eli's family.
Exactly. And the text leaves us with this incredibly stark, haunting image of Eli's surviving descendants.
Yeah, tell us about that.
The contrast comes full circle in just the most brutal way. The descendants of the men who aggressively used a three-pronged fork to steal the best meat from the boiling pots. They will eventually be reduced to coming and bowing down to the new faithful priest, begging for a single silver coin and a crust of bread just to survive.
Oh, man. It is the literal fulfillment of Hannah's song playing out in real-time history.
It really is.
The rich and arrogant are brought down to the ash heap to beg for bread, and the humble are exalted. I mean, the cosmic reshuffle she sang about actually happened.
The theological poetry of the mother became the historical reality of the nation. It proves this timeless principle. Inherited privilege, whether it is the priesthood thousands of years ago or, wealth and corporate status today, is never a license for exploitation.
Which brings us to the final thought I want to leave you with today. Just consider the incredibly different legacies left in this single chapter of history. On one side, you have Eli. He left a legacy of entitlement, of passive leadership, and a profound refusal to hold his own family accountable. And that legacy literally destroyed his house.
Yeah.
But on the other side, you have Hannah. She left a legacy of deep, active gratitude. She fulfilled her promises, and she literally changed the course of history through a boy in a little handmade robe.
Wow.
It forces all of us to look in the mirror and ask, which kind of legacy are our daily actions building? Are we quietly turning a blind eye to the things we know are wrong, wielding our own three-pronged forks to take whatever we want? Or are we quietly sewing a little robe of faithfulness in whatever role we've been given, trusting that it actually matters?
That is the exact question this text demands we ask ourselves. And honestly, it's a question that just never loses its relevance.
No, it doesn't. Thank you so much for joining us for this deep dive. May God bless you, and may God bless all the listeners today. We will see you next time.